AfterTalk.com for exclusive comedy content that YouTube won't let me post, as well as perks that you have to see to believe.
Spend any time in a comment section, and eventually, you'll find the toxic barbs of modern generational warfare. These hateful comments pop up on everything from recipes to movie reviews, and they're usually summed up as, kids these days are a bunch of weak little snowflake pussies, or okay boomer. And there's nothing in between those two comments. Over the last decade, the generation gap has become an exploited part of the zeitgeist. But the fact of the matter is that this conversation is literally nothing new. It's been going on since they were making clay pots in Rome. Older generations have been complaining about kids these days since ancient Greece. And of course, the younger generation has felt misunderstood for just as long. Mom, it's not a phase. I am emo, and also I'm Attila the Hun's kid. I don't know history that well. But a recent survey shows 64% of Gen Z adults believe older generations will never fully understand their struggles. And 65% of boomers and Gen Xers also think that the younger generation will never be able to understand their struggles. But see, we're not so different, you and I. And that's why, instead of focusing on our differences, we should find unity in our similarities. Which, in my estimation, is the fact that every single generation has sucked. All of them. Every single one. The one you're in sucks. The one I'm in, big sucks. I'm not on your side. There are no sides here. We're all the worst. We are all the most whiny little bitches, and it's time to fess up. So get ready to be very mad at me, Tuglets, whether you're my mom's age, my age, or a little bit younger than me, because today I'm talking about every single generation. Let's get into it.
But first, let's do an ad! $25. Literally the lowest price ever. The lowest price you'll ever find for something like this. Find your family history through DNA with MyHeritage. So I don't know if you'd be able to tell this from my voice, face, and overall look, but I'm an American. Land of the free, home of whoever shows up. And because of our immigrant history as a nation, my genetic makeup is everywhere. It is a nightmare. And most of us really don't know what our genetic makeup is. Like, yeah, your dad says you're mostly Irish, but he only knows that because his dad said that to him, and we all know our grandfathers are liars. So to find my actual heritage, I partnered with MyHeritage for this video. MyHeritage is the leading global family history and DNA service that makes exploring your family history easier than ever. Do a quick 2-minute cheek swab, send out the test, and find out your origins and relatives in more regions than any other test available. They also have a privacy policy where they will never share your DNA data, which I find extremely important, honestly.
Honestly, when I took this test, I was just hoping to find out pretty much what my makeup is, because I legitimately have no idea. I'm just an amalgamation of a bunch of different European white people. All right, here it is. I'm 31% Irish. Well, it makes sense, but okay. 12% Swedish, and 56.2% other ethnicities. 12% Swedish, 10% Scottish and Welsh, 10% Germanic, 6% Breton, 3.7% Eastern European, 3% Spanish, Catalan, and Basque, and 2.5% Dutch. I nailed it. Just a complete dog mix. I also have a thing called DNA matches, which connects you to possible relatives that you weren't aware of, which is crazy. Apparently, I have a great aunt called Buckowitz. Good to know. That's a great last name. And one last thing to mention is their ancient origins feature. You can trace your origins back 10,000 years to find out which ancient civilization you descend from. An overall very cool feature which said that I descended from the Romans. You should really consider getting the MyHeritage bundle. With my code BIGTUG25, you're not just getting an insane price on a DNA kit, $25. For the exact same price, you're getting a 30-day free trial. You're getting free shipping, the ancient origins feature, and so much more. You'd be a dummy to pass up on this amazing bundle and just get the DNA kit. I'm just being honest here. So click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen and get started with MyHeritage today. Now, we're going to do the respectful thing here and start with our elders. And this generation really seems to give a about respecting your elders. Go to a McDonald's, they're screaming at people to do it. Baby boomers, people who were born between 1946 and 1964. My father is the last baby boomers possible. He was born in 1964, and I am the last I'm the last millennial possible? No, I'm the first year of Gen Z. So I'm not a millennial. I don't with Harry Potter. I'm cool. I'm cool like the kids are. It's no wonder baby boomers have such big heads. Time magazine awarded them its famous Person of the Year award back in 1967, giving an entire generation a Person of the Year award. Did the baby boomers give that to themselves? That's insane. This generation took over the world quickly due to their sheer numbers. After Hitler put a bullet in his head, allegedly, we got really horny. What a weird sentence that was. But I guess the Holocaust and the atomic bomb got a lot of people horny to put a in a... I don't know if I could say any of that, Chris. It made people want to have sex. That's probably better. As a result, the US experienced a massive surge in babies, and by 1964, baby boomers made up 40% of the population. And while it is very difficult to picture now, baby boomers were once the youths who had progressive ideas and such. I don't know what happened, probably the lead in the gasoline, but at the end of the day, they used to be cool. Baby boomers were the hippies during the Vietnam era. The economic prosperity that led to higher fertility rates after World War II also led to higher rates of college students in the 60s, which means that student-led protests in the 60s and 70s had a bunch of numbers behind them, because there was a bunch of these guys. These guys used to fight for what was right, man. I don't know what happened. Maybe that's why the Ohio National Guard killed 4 students and wounded 9 others at an anti-war protest at Kent State University in 1970. I've touched on this atrocity a few times, like the Cold War video that I made. Chris, do not play the music. We're not talking about that today. I'm skipping the Cold War today. But you can't overstate how massive the social upheaval was in the country at this time. Baby boomers were leading youth-oriented change, and then something happened. I don't know what happened. They shifted from flower power, free love, and psychedelic jam bands to cutthroat capitalists. And this might be best encapsulated by Rolling Stone magazine. I just realized I was doing the band kid hand there. When they do like reports, they do a lot of this. I gotta stop doing that. I'm gonna put this in my pocket. But the Rolling Stone went from a radical magazine based in San Francisco that covered rock and roll and the counterculture to a glossy entertainment magazine of the 80s that called New York City home. And here's where the really annoying part of the baby boomers come into play. There's a lot of annoying parts, but here's a really annoying one. They've been selling us the nostalgia of their peace and love origin story for so long, it's made them filthy rich. Baby boomers are the wealthiest generation, and it's not even close. Not even by an iota is it close. That's not the right word. As a result, they have this pick yourself up by the bootstraps mentality. Have you ever even thought about that phrase, boomers? It's supposed to be ironic. You can't possibly pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Physics, it don't work like that. Chris, put up bootstraps. How am I supposed to lift myself with these things? They're on my feet. But boomers had every advantage possible. They got their educations back when college was half as expensive as it is today. In the 1970s, 4-year degree cost about $39,000 when adjusted for inflation. And today it costs a little over $90,000. And you could work a minimum wage job. How many stories have you heard from boomers who are like, I worked at McDonald's for 2 months and now I can go to college and buy a house? And the house thing, they also bought houses super cheap too. I keep alluding to that. According to one survey, 64% of boomers paid less than $100,000 for their home. 34% paid under $50,000. Could you imagine that? And wouldn't you know it, cheap education and cheap home ownership have led to a very comfortable life. Boomers have accumulated a collective net worth of $82 trillion. More than double the amount of Gen X and 4 times that of Millennials. But they just worked real hard, right? Eventually, you'd think that younger generations would catch up, and you'd be right, but not for the reasons that you think. It's not investments or rising wages, that's not happening. Instead, baby boomers are gonna die. Yeah, it's dark, but it's true. The only chance the rest of us have to survive is just waiting for everyone's babushka to kick the bucket. Economicists refer to this as the Great Wealth Transfer, and they forecast that by 2048, over $100 trillion in assets will change hands through inheritance. But if you're thinking, hey, why don't we just pressure governments to help make laws about wealth disparities, right? That should be a better way to do this. Well, good luck, because boomers control the government. Although they only make 23% of the population, they hold 39% of the House of Representatives and 61% of the Senate. But okay, obviously boomers suck. I don't want to harp on that. I mean, we all know that at this point. If I have boomer fans, they're aware of that. I would hope. And the crazy thing is, I didn't even scratch the surface. Chris, will you put a completely arbitrary time counter on the corner of the screen so it's really jazzed up the motivation to keep watching this video, and also so it looks like I'm going really fast? Thank you. I'm going to run through all the stupid boomer right now, and we're gonna see how fast I can do that. Ready, set, go. Facebook. Okay, millennials created it, I know. But Facebook only continues to exist because boomers use it for the unholy blend of political propaganda and wholesome memes. Ted Bundy, a weird serial killer who was getting a lot of pussy, who broke out of prison and had uncomfortable amounts of fans. Jeffrey Dahmer, there was Dahmer, a weird serial killer with no pussy power who was sent gifts by fans while they were in prison. A lot of serial killers and a lot of serial killer boomer fans. I don't know why they were doing that. They were big fans of the I don't know. Trickle-down economics, that's on the boomers too. This is the economic theory that cutting taxes and regulations for the wealthy and corporations will stimulate the economy and benefit all income levels. Guess what? That doesn't work. We actually have proof of that. A 50-year study that lays out all the data across multiple countries. But since this economic approach benefits the rich boomers, they just ignore the facts and keep cutting down on their own taxes. Golf. Boomers play a lot of golf, and I understand that younger generations play golf too. But the stodgy, exclusive country club part of the golf ethos is all boomer. Sure, go ahead and make a deal that's gonna destroy the environment while you play the back nine, you piece of shit. Alright, moving on. Now, for some of you, this video is gonna be the first time you've ever thought about Gen X. But it's like our parents' age, or my parents' age. This generation was born between 1965 and 1980. You don't think about them because for general online discourse, Gen Xers are often dismissed as boomers. And it sort of makes sense that this generation has fallen under the radar because they are known as the forgotten generation. They were the first generation where oftentimes both parents went to work, and they experienced the highest divorce rate in the US history. As a result, many of them grew up as latchkey kids. Doing the band kid hand again. What the is that? Have I always done that? But these kids were left to their own devices and became a wayward group of individualists who were equally obsessed with pop culture as they were with authenticity. Without traditional familial bonds of earlier generations, Gen X was characterized by strong peer relationships, and this applied to their music as well. Gen X had some pretty good goddamn music, you gotta give it to them. If you look at the genres popularized by Gen Xers, you see the punk, metal, rap, grunge, and assorted dance genres, all with unique identities and generally well-defined boundaries. And more than any other factor, these tribal-like identities were brought to the limelight thanks to cable TV. Gen Xers love cable. Not only was the advent of cable TV allowing kids to develop niche interests in ways that older generations couldn't, but it was exposing them to things they just hadn't seen before. And the biggest example of this change was MTV. Have you heard of it? Big deal. Jersey Shore, that was the end of it. Watching MTV wasn't as important as protesting a war, but it was a prism through which many Gen Xers viewed the world. Whether it was the fall of the Berlin Wall, the AIDS crisis, or presidential elections, MTV provided Gen X with news coverage as it related to them. It's easy to forget, but MTV had its own news division for 36 years. MTV news briefs would periodically pop up on the channel throughout the day and cover everything from tour dates to celebrity deaths and politics. As icons like Kurt Cobain, Tupac, and Biggie Smalls passed away in an increasingly violent era of pop culture, the news always broke for Gen X on MTV. But maybe MTV was a little too good at selling the culture, because Gen X became very quickly noted as slackers by older generations. And sure, there was a vague anti-establishment ethos that was flowing through music genres like grunge and hip-hop, but if anything, it didn't make them lazier, it just made them holier than thou, which really sucks. But Gen X didn't quite hit the financial lottery like baby boomers, but they still did, benefit from much cheaper housing costs and education. So they often find themselves in a bizarre middle ground between baby boomers and millennials. You can tell in their bones that they want to be cool, which is probably a remnant of whatever MTV told them to feel at the time. But a lot of them still have pretty sweet retirement plans and home equity. Sure, they still have plenty to complain about, and you'll hear about it, like the fact that they'll probably see their social security benefits shrink long before they enter the pearly gates. But while they act like pragmatic realists, they're really just bitter bitches. I mean, statistically, they do think they're better than you. Whoever you are, they think they're better than you. One survey asked Gen X to compare themselves to Zoomers, Millennials, and Baby Boomers in the workplace, and the results were telling. An overwhelming majority of Gen Xers, literally over 70%, believe they have better work ethic, are more independent, and more entrepreneurial than every other generation. Somehow these flannel-clad children of divorce think they're better than everyone else on the planet. And even though they seem to have taken that X to heart and consider themselves unique and individualistic self-starters, they're just bootlicking 9-to-5ers who love to talk about everything. Okay, Chris, please put more arbitrary time on the clock. It's time for the Gen X speed suck round, so here we go! Pearl Jam sucks. There was one good grunge band and that was Nirvana. Want to hear someone gargling mouthwash through a didgeridoo while slapping a raw ham? Check out Pearl Jam's greatest hits. Selling out, big thing that Gen Xers did all the time. A little ironic given the fact that the entire generation itself is one massive sellout, but regardless, their concerns over it is ridiculous. Who cares? Let people live. If you were alive in the 90s and your favorite band was in a car commercial, you would have to publicly shame them so that everyone would know that you weren't a sellout as well, which is stupid. Let the people make money. I'll do an ad for butt plugs, I don't care. Crystal Pepsi, stupid. Why would you do that? Clear Pepsi? Who needs that? You did it because they thought the clear drinks were healthier and they're not. That's stupid. You're stupid. You believe that you're stupid. Speaking about that, Zima. Zima sucked. Why are you all about Zima? It wasn't just Pepsi that went clear. You had booze like Zima too. There was a citrus malt beverage that for most accounts tasted like shit. This was before seltzer, but you didn't want to chug a Bud Heavy, so you settled on Zima, and it was a bad idea and you guys should feel bad for it. Flannel. You know what? Sometimes flannels are still chill, but you guys wear it way too much. And also, you guys hate the concept of the handout, even though you all are getting handouts all the time. Handouts are fine. Everyone needs a handout every once in a while. Suck it up. All right. Chris, whatever time I got, celebrate it. Oh my god. Next up is Millennials. These assholes born between 1981 and 1996 are painfully sincere. They were wearing suspenders, big floppy hats, and dreaming big dreams. The most admirable thing about Millennials might just be their optimism. Though it's easy to look at as cringe-inducing, they more than earned those positive vibes considering they're probably the unluckiest generation in modern history. The oldest Millennials hit the job market right as the 2001 recession hit, which was a bad time all around. But once that finally recovered, the 2008 recession hit, which probably was a little bit worse, if I'm being honest. I mean, they called it the Great Recession. You don't put great in front of something unless it sucks. And hey, just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, COVID hit and put a dent in retirement funds and saving accounts while thousands lost their jobs. And yes, alright, maybe them damn millennials love their avocados a little bit too much, right, with their toast and but hey, they've had it rough enough, you know? Let them have their green-ass gross toast. Because on top of everything else, they came of age during one of the scariest and deadliest events in US history, the Hindenburg disaster. Is that what it's called? I'm making a joke. I can't remember whenever that blimp fell down. I'm talking about 9/11 is what I'm talking about. Older generations were obviously affected by 9/11 as well, but it was millennials who were shaped by it. 90% of Americans heard about the attack on TV. A lot of them even watched it live. In high schools and colleges, teenagers witnessed the chaos while sitting in classrooms. And once the shock of the moment started to fade, then we're at war. We're at war now. Oops. Oh, kids, you're having a good time? It's 2001. Haha. Shrek. No, we're at war and everyone died. Now, why we were actually fighting is up for debate. Some think the war might have had more to do with oil or to settle a personal vendetta of President George W. Bush. But regardless of the reason, by the time George W. Bush finished his second term, we were ready to point in a different direction. And then along came the 2008 elections, and with it, we got Barry Obama. Big fan of Barry Obama. He was a pimp. It was an upheaval of the system and an indictment of the cynical nature of Gen X and power-hungry boomers. And Obama knew exactly how to tap into that energy. He ran an expert campaign that really hit on the idea of generational change, especially with his bold, simple slogan, hope. He tapped into millennials' deeply embedded sincerity by pioneering social media use in politics. And that may sound quaint now, but you gotta consider the fact that John McCain, who was running against him, didn't even have a email. This was pretty revolutionary. Obama used social media and championed social causes, playing the generation like a fiddle. Now, I'm not saying don't change the world, but in hindsight, the whole situation seemed pretty naive. There's a delusion to this generation that is mind-blowing. The idea that a president would bring about sweeping positive social change is preposterous. People getting into politics to do good? That's snowflake talk. That is abysmal mentality. More often than not, politics just boils down to power. I'm not telling you anything new here. And we found out the hard way that Obama was just another politician when Edward Snowden revealed in 2013 that the American government was spying on US citizens. All under the hopeful eyes of the Obama administration. No one's a hero. Remember when I called Obama a pimp? I disregard that. Take that down from the screen. But instead of learning their lesson, millennials just kept on guzzling those kumbaya-laced kombuchas. The rise of hashtag activism or slacktivism led millennials to delude themselves into thinking they could solve complex social issues just by posting on social media. Remember that black square we all did during BLM? The did you think that was gonna help? It was ridiculous. It was a bunch of white people being the worst types of white people. But that type of social media posting is sort of like how they thought they solved racism just by voting for Obama. But in the end, all it did was create a hyper-charged, over-politicized internet that led to paranoia, resentment, and pretty much no change. All right, time for another speed suck round. Chris, will you do me the honors? Up first, brunch. Millennials didn't invent brunch, but they sure as made it terrible. What used to be a socially acceptable reason for day drinking has now become an overblown celebration for waiting in line. For what? Eggs, avocado toast, and Irish coffee? It seems like an entire generation has a drinking problem. Number 2, skinny jeans. Skinny jeans are the worst of all of the world. You feel uncomfortable and they make everyone see your penis. You're basically wearing denim compression pants. This is why we have a fertility problem. Heinz colored ketchup. If you were alive in the early 2000s, your first psychedelic experience was probably colored ketchup. Why the were we doing this, millennials? What was it? Why did I have green ketchup? White people calling things white. I just did that a few seconds ago. But I think it stems from some weird mix of racial awareness, sincerity, and cancel culture, but when a white person makes fun of something for being really white, it's pee cringe. Am I guilty of this? Yes, but it's not even the whitest thing about me. Katy Perry. Millennials make Katy Perry way too powerful. She was fun at first, and then she got too much fame and money, and now she's going to help colonize space. And finally, anime. Millennials made anime cool, and then they made it not cool, and now they just are they wear an anime t-shirt, and they think that's like the coolest thing you could do. Millennials made anime bad. All right, moving on. Next up is the world's favorite punching bag, the Zoomers. If you were born between 1997 in 2012, you're in Gen Z. And everyone basically hates you and thinks you're weak and lazy and everything that's wrong with society. But this was always the narrative that surrounded Gen X and Millennials, so all this means is that Gen Z has just reached maturity. And truth be told, we've arrived a little worse for wear. Research shows that 43% of Zoomers struggle with depression, which is nearly twice the average of everyone over 25 years old. Experts believe that my generation is in the middle of a full-blown mental health crisis, though nobody is being honest about what the root of the problem really is. And the answer is social media. It's obviously social media. We were the first generation to come of age completely online. We are the digital guinea pigs. And turns out, this technology is destroying happiness? Who could have called it? Seems like a pretty easy solution here would be to put pressure on big tech companies to regulate their platforms better, but there's just one problem: they spend $1 billion on Congress. Between 2020 and 2024, tech companies spent $260 million on federal lobbying, and that's on top of personal donations from tech billionaires like Elon Musk, who he himself donated $291 million to political candidates and other political spending organizations during the 2024 election. And the rhetoric around technology is becoming, for lack of a better term, aggressive. Billionaire tech investor Peter Thiel said during a lecture that people critical of technology were, quote, legionnaires of the Antichrist. It's a bit big. It's a bit much, I would say there, Peter. So not only do you have a generation that was raised on dopamine-jacking online platforms, and tons of people getting rich off of those people, but you also have a society that's practically making it a moral imperative that technology grows at an impossible speed and becomes more and more ingrained in our lives each day. And then, as luck would have it, add to the pile a massive world-changing event that basically speed-runs several decades of technological integration into everyday life. Yes, I'm talking about COVID. Are you still with me? I've talked about it earlier, and people kind of glaze over when you talk about COVID, but we're talking about it right now. The pandemic fundamentally changed the formative years of my entire generation. If you were old enough to follow the news during COVID, and for sake, I hope you were. If you weren't, what are you doing here? You saw apocalyptic scenes of a virus and death around every corner. Over 1 million people died in the US alone. And I feel like we still haven't wrapped our heads around that. And if the state of the world wasn't scary enough, your own childhood was turned upside down. Zoomers missed out on hands-on education. I didn't, because I graduated college the year COVID hit, but I'm still a Zoomer. You guys. I count. But this lack of good education had a disturbing effect on literally making them dumber. Math and science scores are down across the board. And once you take into account that their social development was stunned, you can start to see why 45% report feeling moderately or extremely lonely. But maybe they wouldn't feel so lonely if they removed 1 or 2 layers of that extreme irony they wrap themselves in every day. Guys, I'm talking to you, we have to figure that out. But Gen Z would rather sit in a dark room alone sharing edgy political memes than ever coming off a little bit cringe. Which is something we gotta get over, gang. It's really fun to be cringe, but you gotta get over that. Their aversion to any display of emotion they view as overly sincere or inauthentic is so strong that it actually makes them inauthentic. Dating experts actually think their sarcastic, irony-laced dating profiles are causing them to remain single. And I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry you guys didn't get to go to prom, but you're ruining your life over it, guys. But there is a little problem here. Once you spot the love of your life in a grocery store aisle, you're gonna have to talk to them. And that's spooky and scary, I understand that. But God forbid they do that, because the anxiety rates of this generation are through the roof, with some surveys revealing well over half experience social anxiety. And look, I'm not trying to make light of anxiety. I have a panic attack every week. It's not something that I take lightly. But that doesn't excuse that weird ass Gen Z stare. What the is that? Why do you guys just stare all the time? Just a vacant look that Zoomers give people after they've asked a question. To experience it firsthand is chilling. It is haunting. I get that social media filled the void of actual socialization for them during lockdown, but the Gen Z stare really feels like they're watching you as if you were a TikTok they want to swipe past. So without small talk and the ability to express your emotions, how the are you guys gonna survive in this world? After watching politics fail repeatedly, they are less likely to have strong attachments to any party. And that sounds good in theory, but without any strong belief system at all politically, they can become the target of extreme candidates. So basically, they'll stare at you blankly while electing a politician who's gonna destroy humanity. Alright, speed suck round for the Gen Z kids. Chris, put it on the screen, let's get moving. Up first, plain shirt chain combo. I do that. You've seen me in a video doing that, but it does suck. It's a disturbingly, almost disgustingly clean look. And I don't mean that in a cool slang way. The chain has always been a symbol of a sleazy scumbag. And it looks so good though, I love how I look in it. But this entire generation, including me, is cosplaying like they've got a cousin who can get you anything you need. Number 2, performative mustache. I didn't check with Jimmy before he wrote this. I feel like he's just talking about me. I'm just gonna read this as if it doesn't pertain to me, because otherwise the script's not gonna work. Some people were born to wear a stash, and dare I say, the mustache chooses you. But there's nothing worse than a Gen Z wearing an ill-fitting mustache. Ew, gross. Damn, this is about me. Holding tiny mics too close to your mouth. Jesus, god damn, Jimmy, you're calling me out. Jimmy, do we need to talk? All right, ring lights, the use of ring lights. That also might be a millennial thing, Jimmy. Let's be careful there. It is super annoying though, in calling thing eras. That's a good one. Calling things eras, that's horrible and I don't do that. No, you're not in your coffee era because you got a Sabrina Carpenter, Dunkin' Donuts treat. You just like pop stars and coffee. Eras are like millions of years. That's a weird thing to say and you're pissing me off. Taylor Swift ruined the word eras. And that's all I'm gonna say about Zoomers. I could say a lot more about it, but 1, I feel like I've been personally attacked several times already, and 2, you guys. It's my generation and we're the best and everyone else sucks. To any smarty pants out there who might be headed to the comment section to let me know how breaking down people based on groups is harmful, I say this. Of course people are more nuanced than just a label. You can't say everyone born within a certain date range is gonna act the same way. That's what people do with astrology and they're space racist. But even though we use imperfect means to make sense of large groups of people and the trends within them, it doesn't mean we should ignore the major historical and cultural events that helped shape us. If we were more understanding of the forces that helped shape our formative years, we might be a little sympathetic towards each other. But boomers and Gen Xers. You guys are both dicks. New videos every Saturday and sometimes Wednesday. Like, comment, and subscribe. Actually do all those things. And I know I've said that so many times at this point where it doesn't sound like a thing anymore, but it's really important that you do those things so that I get big and famous and rich. Once again, thank you to MyHeritage for sponsoring this video. Use my coupon code
BigTug25
to get the MyHeritage bundle. 30-day free trial, free shipping, ancient origins feature, and a whole bunch more. All for only
$25.
Check it out. Link in the description. Do it. And also, speaking of big, famous, and rich, extratug.com. $4 a month. Look at all the extra tug lists on the screen. You get your name at the end of the video. You get a bunch of extra videos throughout the week. Well, not throughout the week, throughout the month. You get one every week. But they're raunchy and crazy, and sometimes I dress up like Satan. No, that's not canon. I'm not Satan. I don't know if we want to include that. I don't know what the canon is anymore. But thank you guys for watching. If you hate a certain generation, let me know in the comments down below. And if you are a part of a certain generation and you think your generation is better, tell me why so I can point and laugh at you Gen Xers. Thank you guys so much for watching.